Yeah, Neil Diamond, Paul Simon. This is not a bit. I literally can't pick them off a map. Someone, they go, we can have some cultural sensitivity because you really don't know where my parents came from.
2 superstar parents who've beaten all the odds, and there's you not having a clue.
All right. This is the Actor's Guide to the End of the World podcast, where we talk about acting in Hollywood in a way people understand. I'm Ikon Song, and this is
Rían Kelly. How you doing?
Follow us wherever you find your podcasts at Actor's Guide Podcast. We have fun clips on social media every week at Actors Guide Podcast. Maybe share with a friend if you enjoy it. And today's show is brought to you by... Tired of looking up at your romantic lead? Need a stepladder to kiss your romantic co-star? Tired of just being Danny DeVito in Twins and not Arnold Schwarzenegger in Twins?
Give yourself a boost with Hollywood Heels insoles. You're going to go from Tom Cruise to Terry Crews, now in Crocs.
All right, so we have a lot of fun things to jump into. So Ryan Coogler was on my mind. He just received an award at the DGA Awards, and his speech was, I gotta admit, I'm gonna have to geek out on Ryan Coogler a lot today. The more I get to know him, the more I'm becoming more of a fan. Anyway, he goes in and right off the top, he proudly shows his DGA card and his health insurance card, and he shows how proud he is to be part of the guild. It just so happens that his wife was home with their sick son. He's okay, but it's also an indication of this is what's happening right now. And he's even more appreciative of the guild and the health insurance. And he goes on and he talks about his family history. He wanted to be in the union before he even wanted to be a director. Actually, his grandfather was a union longshoreman in the Bay Area. His uncle was a Black Panther and then grandfathered in to also be part of the union. And you hear him talk about his sets. He has Teamsters driving him around. He has Teamsters all over the set. It is very clear that union issues are important for him. I thought it was great. You got to hear the speech, right?
Yeah, I did. And I saw an interview with him where he was talking about highest grossing movie by an African-American director. And he was making the point that that qualifier is always put in front of... he often comes up against that, where they qualify with African American, whereas it was independent of any qualifier. And he was making the point that that caveat, which separates him, is always sort of put in before it, which I thought was a good point.
And I think that comes up a lot with Denzel talking about his acting career.
I can't even imagine how frustrating that must be. To come up against that again and again and again.
Side note about that, it just so happens that Kumail Nanjiani, the comedian, was the one hosting the DGA Awards. And one of his opening bits, I'm your host, Kumail Nanjiani. You don't have to know where I'm from to know I'm the first person from there to host the show. So just spot on. That's yeah. Anyway, a lot of Ryan Coogler love. The one thing I will add about this DGA Awards, 3 years ago, DGA did not have a long strike. They did not strike with us. DGA negotiated fairly quickly.
I do remember at the time of the strike, there was some people were complaining about the fact that the DGA didn't strike in solidarity.
Exactly.
And that they did a quick deal. But I don't know enough about the conditions of their deal to understand that. You know what I mean? Let me just ask you this. How important was it to you to become a SAG member?
I only really understood the importance of the union. To be honest, it probably came up around during the strike. It was understood you're going to need to get into the union one way or the other, and the sooner you can do it, the better. And I did not hesitate, and I'm glad I did when I got in, but that was a different time.
It's an interesting one because I think it was very important to me because I kind of came from a background of, strong union membership or being favourable to unions. And Ireland has a lot of history with labour unions. And I was in unions, even in sort of part-time jobs. I remember I worked in Dublin Airport. You talked about I was a member of a union in Dublin Airport. And I think the idea of being a member of SAG and then SAG-AFTRA as it became was very important. It meant something to me, and I think it just meant it was a sort of a legitimacy thing, or I felt like I was part of something bigger. Also, coming from Ireland, you hear about SAG, and I knew about that growing up a little bit. So like that was such a milestone for me, come from Ireland to become a SAG-AFTRA member. And
we want to get more into Ryan Coogler and Sinners.
Let's get into the Ryan Coogler thing. Yeah.
So I do want to say that there will be some spoilers here. Ryan Sinners has been out for a while. It's been a massive hit. To be honest, I was probably one of the last people who watched the movie. So
yeah, and we'll be careful about it, but we will say that Bruce Willis is dead at the end of The Sixth Sense.
So did you know Ryan Coogler has such a strong connection to the Irish community? I had no idea. Sinners has been a hit for months. We were sitting on this gold mine. So crazy enough, one of the main vampires is Irish. The inspiration was from a Disney Channel movie called The Luck of the Irish. And that sparked his appreciation for Irish culture. Apparently, there's a good pocket of Irish community in the Bay Area where he's from, and everyone loved The Luck of the Irish on Disney Channel. And so there was this Irish love that was stoking through him at an early age, and it just snowballed from there.
I mean, he talked about, there are historical strong links between, Irish culture and African American culture. I went on a little bit of a internet ramble on this too, and there's a statistic that I saw, which if it's true is pretty remarkable, that 38% of African Americans have Irish heritage, which is a very high percentage.
Wow.
But particularly I like how he mentioned the music, because there's like traditional Irish, there's strong kind of crossover and parallels between Irish music, traditional music, and strong kind of crossover and parallels between Irish music, traditional music, and a lot of African American music, and different styles, and even in the Caribbean, you will hear like Jamaican accents and Caribbean accents. There's a lot of Irish in those accents because of the historical, because of the way Irish were brought over to the Caribbean as indentured servants. Is a bit of a tangent. But,
no, this is good. I was about to ask that. Why is 38% of African Americans Irish? Like, what's the colonialism?
Because, yes, a lot of colonialism, because African Americans were obviously, Africans were brought against their will to the US, but in the North, Irish and African Americans would have been in the same communities doing the same jobs. You know what I mean? They would have been sort of working class jobs, and so they would have mixed a lot
in the same community.
So, yeah, there is also a sort of a kinship, and I'm not making any comment on the hierarchy of who had it worse at all. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
it's not, of course, I'm not making any parallels there, but like there's a sort of an affinity or a kinship between cultures and communities that have been oppressed in some way, and in our case that was British occupation and going through a famine, which if you want to read into the origins and causes of is quite detailed, and
right.
that type of oppression tends to foster identification and community. Like, for example, during the Irish famine, the Choctaw Nation in America, who were impoverished themselves, managed to raise money to send to Irish famine victims in Ireland. And it's remarkable that they even were aware of the Irish famine. I mean, you're talking the 1840s. There's a monument to the Choctaws in County Cork, I think. So there are links.
That's incredible.
That's incredible. Damien Dempsey, an Irish singer who's a wonderful Irish singer, has a song called Choctaw Nation. The historical connections are so fascinating to me and so interesting. But
and so bringing it to Ryan Coogler, because your head vampire just happens to be Irish. This is not kind of Irish. This is like really Irish. And so me not knowing any of this history, you think, oh, this is kind of random. It didn't really take me out. But Ryan Coogler, this is a conscious choice. His head vampire is Irish. And in this story, Remick, played by Jack O'Connell, who's blowing up. His father, I think, was Irish. And in a way, this role was kind of an ode to honoring his father. And Coogler was honoring his uncle, who helped stoke the love for blues music. So in a way, a lot of this movie was an ode to their ancestors. So Remick is a Irish vampire. He talks about how the Christians took his land. Now, the backstory is because he's a vampire. He's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. That's referring to hundreds of years ago. So he's referring to the colonialism that he understands what it's like to be taken over and colonized. And in a way, he's trying to say, I understand your pain, and the KKK will come back for you, will take from you just like they took from us. So you need to join me. And in a way, that's this underlying story of these vampires, literally, but also culturally. He's trying to, Sammy is the young protagonist who has the beautiful voice and he's incredible singer. He's trying to tempt Sammy to join their cult and join their, use his power of music. It's almost like it's supernatural. His voice is so incredible. He's trying to use that power and bring it to his community, which ironically, he's trying to colonize everyone else through his vampire little community. And he's actually just doing to everyone else what he already did in some weird parallel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's also white and he's also the devil. So there's so many things going on, but this is so much a heart of the story with this Irish colonization as a layer.
The Irish were Celts. That was, before it was Christianity sort of supplanted a lot of that. But what struck me when I was watching Sinners was that the vampires were outsiders, which that nobody wins. It was nobody really wins in the end. There was no winners.
That's a good point.
But I really did appreciate that. And like, I know I say I never understand metaphors. That's obviously not true. Like I do get some stuff. I always just assume there's a deeper level that I've missed somehow.
And another nod to Ryan Coogler. And I know some people watched Sinners and didn't know what to make of it, didn't understand it. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but needless to say, there were so many things going on and it's so deep. Stanley Kubrick said this, and I'll never forget. A lot of people want one thing to happen every 5 minutes in a movie. He wants 5 things to happen every 1 minute of a movie.
Because I went into Sinners kind of blind, I didn't know that there was Irish music in it, and I was so thrilled to, when that popped up on the screen, I was like, oh my God. And I thought it was beautifully handled, and there's wonderful versions of those songs of traditional Irish songs in the movie as well.
But a lot of people say that there was as much care for that Irish dancing song as it was for the jukebox scene of that really impressive one take.
That was an incredible scene.
The amount of care that he takes as a filmmaker, it's really incredible. So there you go. Moving on and keeping on with this theme of culture, and I was waiting for a time to talk about this. Not too long ago, someone, a fan of the podcast and an avid listener,
Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah, right. I wish. Someone asked me, because we were talking casually about music references, and I mentioned how, Neil Diamond, Paul Simon. I wasn't really sure the difference between the two, but, we were talking about the Kate Hudson movie. Kate Hudson's latest movie is called Song Sung Blue. She stars opposite Hugh Jackman, and they play a real-life Neil Diamond cover band. And so it's not lost on me that, I casually mentioned that, and I still can't pick him off a map. This person said to me, he was like, wait, so explain that. Do you really? And this is not a joke. This is not a bit. I literally can't pick them off a map. Someone, another friend, and they said something so brilliant. They go, hey, we can have some cultural sensitivity because you really don't know how I grew up and you don't know where my parents came from. And it was so brilliant. I absolutely did not even think of that. My friend was like, well, actually, is that true? How did you? And I wasn't even able to wrap my head around it, but I'm going to take a quick moment to share this true immigrant story. This is just one immigrant story, but this is what I think is a pretty incredible story of how my parents came. It's very rare that I would get an honor, be able to honor them. We had Bad Bunny just do the Super Bowl show, which was a huge, multicultural affair. Last week, I brought you to see Jesse Buckley. I feel like I'm bringing together worlds, just like Bad Bunny. And it's just like, this is what's happening right here. So I wanted to share this one story of my parents, and it'll be perfectly clear why I have no idea who Neil Diamond and Paul Simon is. And at that point, you could probably pull in Neil Simon. I'll get through this fairly quickly. My parents grew up in Taiwan, went to the top university in Taiwan. The top gets a chance to go to America. My mom, she goes to the University of Kentucky for her master's. Of all places, she goes to Kentucky. She majors in something like agriculture. She has no idea what she's doing, but she gets a master's in there. She follows her sister to Detroit. They happen to be at a McDonald's, and they see a hospital across the street. And they're like, you know what? You should go into that hospital and ask for a job. So she walks into the hospital. They say, skip HR. You don't want to deal with them. Let's just go straight to the source. There are a couple of Asian immigrants looking for a job. The doctor says, oh, what are you looking for? It's like, oh, yeah, we just want to apply for a job. They're like, oh, come right this way. She applies to get training for a medical technologist, has no backing for any of this stuff. She doesn't realize that head of the hospital is world famous. Her visa is about to run out. The doctor, who's famous that she doesn't even know, stamps her visa. She's able to stay in the country. She does this program for hematology. For those that don't know, hematology is you analyze blood specimens and you find it for diseases. She just happens to be really good at it. No rhyme or reason. It just happened to be the medical tech job that she got.
Is there like a house style, maverick element to this? You have to think outside the box, or is it just like a very technical kind of a job?
I think it's very technical. It's a beautiful job for someone that's a little introverted. You're staring at slides and a microscope for hours on end. And she never got tired of it. And she spotted things that no one else could see. So she literally was kind of a phenom. A little side story in Detroit, because it is Detroit. She took the bus to work. She was held up at gunpoint. Thank God she survived. Everyone was like, well, you probably need a car. She saved up so much money because she was crashing on her sister's couch and just pocketing this money because she's like, this is America. This is so much more money than we would get in Taiwan. She paid her car in cash and had no idea. I mean, to be honest, it's still a little rare. All of her coworkers were so blown away thinking, oh my God, she's rich. They were asking her for loans when they needed money. And she didn't even understand that this is weird. Why is everyone treating me rich? I just paid for my car in cash. She didn't realize that her doctor boss was world famous until she moved to Philadelphia. She never had to struggle for a job. They all were like, wait, you trained under famous Dr. so-and-so? They didn't believe her, and they had to call him up. She worked for 38, 40 years, and she was a superstar hematologist for the rest of her career. Anyway, wow. So that's her side. My dad, National Taiwan University, he dreams about being a math professor. It's his only dream. It was only his only passion. He thought he was a brilliant genius. He ended up not being, but he just ended up being pretty good. Got his master's. He was trekking along looking for a professorship. Finally got a job, and he settled down at a community college outside of Philadelphia. He was the first immigrant-born professor, and God willing, he's about to hit his 40th year of being a professor. He still loves teaching. And he looks at his teachers who are younger than him. They don't have the passion. They can't hold their kids' attention. And his dream still is teaching lower income American citizens, helping them try to get to the middle class. That's his passion, and it's still his passion right now.
Paul Simon, Neil Diamond, couldn't tell the fucking difference.
Yeah, exactly. I'm getting to that.
Two superstar parents who've beaten all the odds. And there's you not having a clue.
Exactly. So get to me. A lot of this you already know, but this is Cliff Notes. I started playing piano at 5. My mom made me. I started playing tennis at 7. Started competing in piano and tennis. Don't remember anything else. I did really good in school. Hated it. I was super bored. Got the highest SAT score in my high school. Hated all of it. I was very angsty. I just wanted my parents to get off my back, and I wanted to play video games. I was lucky enough to even know movies, let alone any music references. And you know this, my dad didn't let me read books that were not math related. I went to college, went to a fancy college, and then thank God I found acting. And then the rest is history. I don't know where Neil Diamond or Paul Simon would ever enter their equation.
Or the Beatles.
Or the Beatles, you can add that. maybe my parents might have heard their songs at some point, but like, I think what I'm getting at is they weren't even in my galaxy. So I didn't even know if you knew who Paul Simon or Neil Diamond was. I don't even know who knows them.
Everybody else.
There was so much white shit, even more common, that I probably don't know. I think the one takeaway, if there's any takeaway for creators and actors, now this is not a knock on Neil Diamond. I'm very open to going and exploring them. But I think it's a really great lesson that if you haven't been found, just give it time. Your audience is out there, they just haven't found you yet. And it took this many years for me to discover the iconic Paul Simon and Neil Diamond.
Here you are. You know, I think it's also, conversely, there's a parallel lesson there. No matter how famous you think you might be, there's some math nerd out there who doesn't have a clue who you are.
Exactly. You know, don't try to measure yourself against these iconic greats. There are people out there that don't know them, and you go do your thing. And you keep plugging along. All right. No, you guys have the lottery, right?
So the lottery that I came in on was called a diversity visa, whereby the US government gives out 50,000 green cards a year. That's a permanent residency in a lottery system worldwide. How they determine how many your particular country gets is based on how many they've given over the last 5 years or something like that. If you are picked, which I was, and almost threw the letter away because I didn't quite believe it at the time. So I entered this through an advert on Hotmail. Do you remember like ads would pop up on Hotmail? And there was like this site, enter the US diversity visa, whatever, green card lottery, which sounds like a scam. And I honestly kind of half thought it was. It was an agency that did it. I think I paid €90 for 3 years of draws. I found out subsequently it's actually free to enter. They were just taking the money and doing it for you. However, there was no real incentive for them to actually do it because, you know, how would you know? You wouldn't. They would just tell you didn't get it. But they actually did it. So I submitted it through them. I got it the first year. I had never been to America. I had always been jealous of people who had been to America, or like, you know, friends who had relatives or cousins in America that would go over or whatever.
How lucky are you? What were the numbers based on this lottery? Like you like the chances of you getting it. How happy were you?
I was happy. I was thrilled, but I was also really kind of nervous because like it was the kind of thing where I went, oh, that'd be cool. I'd love to live in America, and I'd been acting for a couple of years in Ireland, and I thought that'd be a cool thing to do in America. But I didn't really expect it. You know what I mean? It was a vague kind of hope. I remember my girlfriend at the time was like, she's like, that's a scam. You're an idiot. And I was like, well, I don't know. But I was kind of sort of the same opinion. I was like, well, maybe it probably is a scam, to be honest.
I'd be scared.
Yeah. But when I got the initial letter, it came from the Kentucky Consular Center, and I almost threw it out because I didn't recognize it was one of those things where it looked like kind of junk mail, and I went, oh, hang on. Congratulations, you've been selected. So I was thrilled. I mean, I really was excited, but it was so scary because it was at a time, this is 2007, so it was at a time there was no smartphones at that time. America seemed very far away. You know, it was expensive to call home. I think Skype was just kind of coming online. It was an interesting time where I was ill prepared to deal with it, but there was also a sort of a bravado, like born of ignorance, you know what I mean, where I blagged my way into meetings I had no business being in. I ended up on sets of big TV shows through people I had met, and I ended up sleeping on the couch of a friend who I had met in Ireland. I had done a short film that he wrote and directed, but funnily enough, he's still in the industry and very successful now, and spoiler alert, I think you know who I'm going to say, that was PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson. No, it wasn't. It was my pal Kevin Jakubowski, who's a brilliant screenwriter and still is at the top of the industry.
Well, credit to you, because I feel like those days are very special where something is so new, so foreign. And with technology and a computer in our pockets, I could go to a lot of countries and I just walk around and it's not nearly as scary. So credit to you. The one thing I will add, this program that you just said, the diversity, that lottery, that did serve Taiwan for a bit, but there was a special act passed by the U.S. government, the 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act, that actually allowed many Taiwanese and Chinese professionals and students to immigrate. And it was a wave of of merit-based movement to the U.S. Now, that didn't last very long, so that's just another nod to how lucky my parents were because that timing matched up. Anyway.
Yeah. Sorry, I just looked it up there. The Diversity Visa Lottery for 2027 has been paused indefinitely for the moment.
Wow. Well, obviously with the current national climate, that's not a surprise.
So,
all right.
There you go. Some immigrant stories.
This all wrapped together very nicely. Hidden gems.
I literally woke up this morning going, what's going to be my hidden gem today? I still haven't come up with an answer.
So my friend, I was actually looking for a cute, thoughtful gift. Found this gift shop. It's nearby. It's over in Burbank. It was formerly called Mindful Nest, and I believe the new name now is Stay Home Friend. And it's just quirky, locally owned, tongue-in-cheek humor, thoughtfully sourced teas and magnets, mugs, trinkets, all across the map, like incense. Anyway, so if you're local to LA looking for a really cute shop, it's definitely worth a visit. And a lot of people are coming in buying stuff, and I think it's great to support local. So, and I will say, I found this one cat mug that I definitely will be buying at some point. And it's a picture of a cute cat in this mirror. And it says, "What am I doing with my lives?" And I've never felt a mug speak to me on so many deep levels. Anyway, so that's it. Stay home, friend, in Burbank.
Nice. So my hidden gem is ripped directly from the mouth of Jessie Buckley, which she talked about at the Q&A that we went to last week. But it was a song that they played a lot on the set of Hamnet. That's it's a combination of On the Nature of Daylight by Max Richter, which is a pretty famous piece of music that Max Richter.
Is that the instrumental or that's the instrumental,
the
not words?
instrumental is called On the Nature of Daylight. That's the Max Richter song. But this is Dinah Washington, I don't know how to say that properly, but has this song called This Bitter Earth. On an album called The Blue Notebooks by Max Richter, there's a version that combines the two, so her lyrics. And the song, This Bitter Earth, is like a 40-year-old song combined with the piece of music On the Nature of Daylight. And Jessie Buckley said that they played that a lot on set, and that really helped them find the last scene of the movie. If you've seen the movie, it's a pretty great last scene. But I've been listening to it since she mentioned it. She's like, "Oh, go find this piece of music." So I'm just passing that on. It is beautiful. It's quite sad. It's hopeful, but it's sad. But it's called This Bitter Earth / On the Nature of Daylight. Yes.
I love that. Put it in the description. All right. That's it, guys. A special multicultural episode.
An immigration episode.
Hope you enjoyed it. Stay safe out there and see you next week.
See you next week.